Well, good afternoon, everyone. In some ways, it's a small crowd, but it's an important crowd. And in some ways, I'm delighted that there are this many of you here. It's 1 o'clock. It's not a traditional time that we have these quarterly Q&As. We didn't know how it would work, but we like to move the time around in case it is better for some than others. And I also know it's a nice day. Believe me, even though the room is not filled, I don't delude myself for a minute into thinking that that means there are no questions, that everything is solved, and we have nothing to address. I know better than that. With the group that is here, I'm happy to open the Q&A. For those of you who haven't been here before, and there are a few, we do these quarterly. I have a few things to share, but I'd like particularly this time to have you let me know, and some of my colleagues in administration who have specific answers to specific questions, what's on your mind. So we'll open the floor in just a few minutes. Let me share a few things with you, though. I'm looking at Vice President Dawn Rhodes and thinking about her requests over the last couple of days that you respond to this survey on smoking. This all came out of a session like this, or a couple of sessions like this over the years. People raised the issue about smoking on campus. And obviously, there are those among us who would rather see no smoking, and there are smokers here. And we have to be cognizant of all our constituents. So if there are any of you that have not participated in the smoking survey, please give us as much information as you can by your responses so that we can come to terms with an issue that many institutions have faced. Oop, you okay? That many institutions have faced and that many municipalities have faced, how to be cognizant of people who wish to smoke while taking care of others who believe it has no place in the confines of our institution. That's the smoking survey, again, grew out of the Q&A. A follow-up to the Q&A we had in January, which you know I devoted to our Title IX challenges. I made some commitments at that time, and I want to make sure that you've seen information related to the follow-up. I indicated that we would assemble a task force, recognizing all of the cynicism that usually arises when people say they're going to set up a committee or a task force. This task force is time limited. It has been established. It is focused specifically on Title IX issues, and the charge I've given to the task force is that they look at what we're doing now, which is largely investigation when we get complaints, and see if we're staffed adequately even for that. But I think in a much more elegant way, what we really ought to be focusing some of our efforts on and some of our resources on is the piece about education. You know, we all have mandatory online training. It's probably not enough. It's probably not adequate. I've heard subsequently, and I'll tell you how I heard this, that some of the online training that we purchase from vendors, like other institutions do, are not particularly appropriate to this campus. They're not, if you will, mature enough for the students on this campus. They may be fine for an undergraduate campus where there are fraternities and sororities and drinking. It's not quite us. It's not quite our student body. That's an example of how we need to look at how we're educating our family in terms of appropriate behaviors. That task force is going to look at something that I'm often asked. Okay, so you get a complaint, you investigate it. What do you do about it? It's the issue of accountability. And I want advice with regard to accountability. And that task force is also going to look at the broader area that impinges on sexual harassment, just the issue of respect and civility. As I've said in a couple of subsequent fora, the issue of people among us who just act like a jerk, if you'll allow me to say that. And that behavior needs to be called out and corrected. So the group has been assembled. It's about 16, 17 people. It's chaired by Dean Natalie Eddington of the School of Pharmacy. And it includes faculty, staff, including representatives from each of the shared governance groups, and students. I've told Natalie that I'd like to be hearing what we need to do, ideally in 90 days, no longer than 120 days. So that's a time-limited group. I also said, and this is in the, and they've been assembled, and I think they've had their first meeting this week, or will have it later this week. The other group that I want to put together, and we're gathering names and volunteers now. In other words, we'll ask people, and hopefully they'll volunteer their time. I want to have something akin to our Diversity Advisory Council, which has been very helpful to me in doing my job. I want to have a Women's Advisory Council. So when I say that, that means much more than even the critical issue of sexual harassment. It means issues like pay equity, women to men. It means issues like promotion. It means issues like recognizing, again, in the theme of promotion, things that we don't always recognize across the schools that may, in fact, affect women more than they affect men. In other words, issues where we need to be more sensitive to differences between the genders as it relates to the workplace writ large. So that group is in the process of forming, and I will have a letter out when we know who the names are, and I'll share with you who's going to chair that group. And I see that group as, not like the task force I mentioned, as an ongoing group. In a completely different vein, I hope you've read in the newspaper, and obviously this is subject to the governor's signing, but I don't think there's much issue about it. There will be a 3% COLA July 1. So for all of us, a little more in our paycheck. It's cost of living. I'm mindful of the fact that there hasn't been money in the budget, in the state budget, for a merit increase in a couple of years, and that's something that we need to continue to lobby for. But I do think it's pretty safe to say that there'll be a COLA in July. I promised you I'd leave plenty of time for Q&A, but I see I'm still rolling along. So tolerate me a little more, and then maybe you'll have some questions. There's been a lot of talk about the shuttle. Again, Dawn is here, and Dawn Rhodes, and we can talk about that a little more if you have questions. In a nutshell, the fact that we've had to take a look at the shuttle that we put into place, largely supported by students and their fees. The reason we were able to do that over the years is because with our partner in College Park, they've provided the transportation. They've provided the drivers. And they've let us know that they're having trouble having enough drivers. So and I totally understand this. They have to take care of their campus first. So that caused us to say, well, we better take a look at the whole thing because we have to go out and look for another way to do this. And there's been some very significant data gathering. One of the things that will not surprise you in what we've learned already, if you take a look at the shuttles during the day, and we've run them all day long, there's essentially nobody on the shuttle except for the morning and the evening. I'm only exaggerating a little bit. So that becomes an opportunity. We couldn't do that with College Park drivers because once they come up here, you know, it's not like your friendly school bus driver. You know, they drive in the morning and they drive in the afternoon. We have to get more like that, I think. So we're looking at those alternatives. And finally, on the subject of safety, and Chief Carey is here, there's been too much problematic activity in the neighborhood, so to speak, and it's challenged faculty and staff and students. I'm talking about beyond the campus. And one immediate step that the chief has taken, given the upswing in crime in the neighborhoods in a city, and I'm not saying anything that hasn't been widely reported and isn't true, in a city that is under-policed by approximately 400 or 500 officers, and you sort of know what's going to happen in an environment that's under-policed. And in response to crimes that have been committed against our faculty, staff, students, and our neighbors, we have started running a shuttle west of Martin Luther King, like we do especially in the evenings, in the morning as well. I've heard from students that and it's anecdotal, but I've heard from students that that's been especially well received. And we're also looking at other opportunities that we have to try to keep the members of our campus, and if it works for the community as well, the members of our community a little safer. So there's not much more I can say with regard to what I just said at this point because we're studying it and I don't want to overpromise, but we're trying to be as forward-thinking as we can. So I've given you a bunch of little tidbits. So here's one more. Our partners in the medical system have been very much in the news this last month or two. It has not been good for anybody. It's not been good for our institution. And I also want you to know that I serve on that board, in case you don't know. I'm an ex officio member. That means that I'm there by virtue of my position, not because I'm some God's gift to that board. That also includes the dean of the medical school, the chancellor of the system, the chief nursing officer, and the chief of the medical staff at the medical center. So we're all ex officio members of the board. We're there to make sure that the interests of the university, the School of Medicine, are made known to the board. We don't vote, but I would hardly pretend to have nothing to do with that board. That story is going to go on for a while. There's been some very significant legislation passed by the legislature, again, as you've read. The story has become much bigger than it would have been, given the issues with the mayor. And I don't, again, delude myself for a minute into thinking it creates challenges for our reputation. as a university. We all have the same name, University of Maryland. What's the antidote? I need to do everything I can to convince you and all of your colleagues to keep up your great work. I think the legislature, I think the governor, they know that UMB is a critical asset to the state. I've been trying to make sure that in what they do in order to assure the public of needed corrections related to what has been reported, it doesn't injure the asset that they have. And the best antidote to that is continuing to do our great work and not letting it get us down. Now, I know that's very easy for me to say. I'm going to say it to the student government this afternoon too when they have a Q&A with me, but that's what I need. Now, I've chewed up 15 minutes of yours. Ask whatever you want on any of the subjects I've raised or anything that I haven't thought of. Who wants to start? I didn't say, okay. Good.
Hello, my name is Ebony Nicholson. And
Hi, I know who you are.
I do the diversity and inclusion programming for students in campus life. And
Talk about your, if you will, now you got the microphone. So before you ask me the question, what about that poverty training that you do?
Yes. So,
can you tell everybody about that?
Yeah, so we conduct a poverty simulation about, this year we would have done, I think we'll do 10 this year. So it's a 3-hour simulation. People get an identity and they have to navigate life at or below the poverty line. So it's a simulation of about 4 weeks. So it only takes 3 hours only. And so yeah, they have to navigate paying bills, going to work, childcare, things like that. And so it provides a lot of learning, and students report that students and staff participate, and they report feeling more or understanding, developing more understanding, developing empathy, things like that, and how they could better improve their treatment plans and things to accommodate for people's lives and hectic schedules. So it's a really great program. You should definitely keep an eye out and come join us. We're always looking for volunteers and participants. It's open to staff and student and members of the UMB community. But my question is about the women's group that is being formed, and if that group is going to be focused on an intersectional aspect of womanhood, and so will it include issues pertaining to women of color, trans women, things like that, and how will they be working together with the Diversity Advisory Council?
All of that to be determined, and not because I want to dodge the question, but I'm going to give them a charge, but I'm not going to lay out the entirety of the agenda. I'd be the first to tell you, honestly, I don't know much about some of the things you just said. And I think that's the point. So I think the people that come around the table need to have input. If they're in my position and they don't even understand the terms, or they do understand the terms, but in terms of what will be put on the table, this is a group that will go on. This is not to solve a few problems that need to be solved immediately and then disband. So I think you've just come up with some matters that they need to attend to. Okay, so keep an eye on it. Others? See, I shouldn't have made my opening statements. Then you would have asked me about all that stuff. Dawn, do you want to, while people are thinking, anything you want to report or elaborate on off of what I mentioned?
As far as the shuttle, we've done a lot of work, and I have to thank the parking staff who has put in tons of hours, as well as Bill Crockett, who has done a great job helping us actually collect the data. So exactly what you said has been what we've found. We've also found that there is a particular route that has very little ridership on it. And we have focus groups scheduled next week with students that we've identified, some shuttle riders, some non-shuttle riders, to share with them the data we've discovered and 3 options for people to consider and to give us feedback on. We also then have open town halls that are open for faculty, staff, and students on April 22nd from 4 to 5 and April 29th from 11 to 12. We'll again share the data, share the options that are under consideration, and get people's feedback. And then we'll be able to go back and make a decision around what we've laid out. And we're very confident that we'll be able to find something that will meet the needs of the majority of our current ridership. And we'll be able to have it in place when College Park stops providing service.
Keep it right there. I'm not going to let the chief out without some comment. What do you have to share with us, Chief Carey?
Well, I was just informed today that we received a $100,000 grant from our coast team that worked on it to help supplement like our campus outreach and our homeless liaison program.
So I'm going to stop you there because I think, I hope you don't mind if we're quiet on questions for a few minutes, some information sharing here. Just like I'm proud of the poverty simulation, you know, I think you need to know that your police department is doing things like homeless outreach. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, we have one officer that's assigned, and he has gone through some training, and he works cooperatively with the city entities that work directly with the homeless and the homeless issues in and around campus. We've done one symposium and brought in a homeless liaison coordinator from New Orleans, and we have one proposed in coming August, I believe, for New York City to come down and do another symposium of homelessness there. So he's working and making connections, and he's making differences in lives. When I come into work, I pass several homeless people, as many people do, but I stopped and talked to one, and he knows our officer firsthand, and he knows the services that he's already been offered by this just one officer. So he's making a difference out there.
I sometimes ride around with the police, and I'm amazed that we can go up and down Martin Luther King, and the officer that I'm with, not necessarily this homeless officer, can say, that's so-and-so. We've been talking to her. She doesn't want to come in yet. But just the fact that we're trying to be of service, for me, it's something that I carry with pride. Anything else that you want to mention, Chief? I'm sure, look, even if they don't ask, I'm sure that safety is always top of mind.
Well, our PAL program is expanding. We're going 5 days a week now.
Everybody know what the PAL program is? No, there's some head shaking.
It's a police athletics / activities league. So
All of these were closed in the city some years ago, which has not been to the benefit of youth and, if I may, and youth-police relationships. So, bluntly speaking, we decided to do it ourselves.
And it's very successful, and it's expanding too. We have a new sergeant that's in charge of it and coordinating it, and he's done wonders in such a short time. Just reaching out to the students, and they call him Uncle Nick now. I mean, that's the kind of relationship that we're building with our future, and these are children that are getting mentored by the police, and so that they can go out in the community and know that the police are not the enemies. We're human beings, and we're here to help.
So 30 kids in the program right now at the CEC. When we open the new CEC, as long as we have funding, and people have been very generous with us from the Baltimore community because they believe in it, hopefully we'll be able to bring that up to about 100 kids at any one time. Anything else?
I don't want to.
You don't want to brag, right? Okay. Questions? Others? Nancy Gordon, right here.
This is a good question. It's a plug for commencement, which is Thursday, May 16th at the Royal Farms Arena. We've really changed things around this year. Rather than being the final event of all the graduations, we are the first. We'll be kicking it off. So we are Thursday instead of Friday. May 16th, 9 a.m., Royal Farms Arena. Barbara Pierce Bush, the granddaughter of George H.W. and daughter of George W., is our speaker. She is the co-founder of the Global Health Corps, and I think her talk will appeal to a lot of people. Commencement is open to everyone. It's really why we're all here. It's the most important day of the year. And I do hope that we will see some of your faces there on May 16th. No tickets necessary, just show up.
You know, I always say that, and I will say it, I don't care how tired you get of me saying it, the only group of people that pay to be here are the students. And that's why the place exists. And if you can manage it, just showing up for them at graduation, everybody likes a crowd, right, when they have a celebration? So think about what Nancy said, if you can manage it. It's better time used than letting me stand here and yak at you. Please, how are you? Becky.
Hi, Dr. Perman. I'm Becky Straw from the School of Pharmacy. So mentioning commencement and students being the reason that we're all here.
Can we get that mic a little closer?
With mentioning commencement and students and the reason that we're all here is because of them made me want to ask this question. Would the university ever consider doing student recruitment advertising campaigns? Large undergraduate, most universities, they advertise their programs, their individual schools as a way to get students to apply. And certainly in pharmacy, we're seeing some downturns in applications and admissions for our doctor of pharmacy program. So the university has done wonderful advertising campaigns about our champions of excellence and our community engagement efforts. So I wonder if admissions and recruitment would be something that could be considered as well.
Well, I know that several of the schools, and maybe you do it too, get on the road essentially. Some schools have been very intentional about working on the need to find more students of color from around the country. I know the law school does that. Several schools do that. So that's all to the good. I think that is something that a particular school can decide depending on the marketplace. It wouldn't make sense for the School of Medicine because that's not an area that's being challenged in terms of applicants. It might make sense for some of the other schools. You mentioned pharmacy. That's a national issue right now, and I think pharmacy schools are going to need to be very competitive with each other. I guess what I would say, Becky, is I don't have anything against it. And if individual schools think that that can be an approach to get what we, of course, require, which is highly qualified students, then fine. Anybody else? Anybody want to say anything or make an announcement? Do I see some leadership from the School of Medicine back there? Do you have, I do see it. Come on, deans. Any updates? I gave an update on our campus-wide sexual harassment task force, Nancy, Dr. Lowett. You've been very active in that regard. I also talked about a women's issue group that we're putting together to deal with some issues that you're focused on, like gender equity issues. So please, if you want to share. I'm not letting them out yet.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you, Dr. Perman, and thank you, everyone, and thank you for that lovely invitation. It's been such a pleasure to partner with the University of Maryland, Baltimore on some of these issues, and I'm just very grateful, Dr. Perman, for your support. I'd say to update this group, we have a number of, the dean implemented a number of kind of top-down initiatives to address some of the concerns in our culture related to sexual harassment in particular. And I always like to say that although sexual harassment is not unique to our culture, it is true of our culture, and so we are definitely focused on this and focused on trying to improve conditions really for everyone, for students, for residents, for faculty, for postdoctoral scholars. And we are, so the dean implemented a number of initiatives in January, and we have had a number of committees now working on some other projects that we should be hearing more about within the next few months. But we have students engaged in this process, we have residents, we have faculty, and it's really been very, very exciting. I'll say that you all have, or many of the folks at the School of Medicine have heard that the dean has a gender salary equity study underway for School of Medicine faculty, and we expect the results from that study to be available, we hope, by late summer. We're looking kind of at that timeline. The other study that the dean conducted, or had some of our faculty conduct, was on promotion rates for men and women in different departments throughout the School of Medicine. And the results of that study, plus, and sort of on some preliminary results of that, he has charged a committee that Dr. Parker and I are serving on to look at creating or offering some new guidelines to allow our promotions committee to value the contributions of clinician educators, essentially, so that we are looking at more of the ways that clinician educators are scholarly about their work that may not be exactly peer-reviewed publications, which has been the gold standard that we've used in the past for promotion. So we expect to see both a formal presentation of the results of that research study, as well as the results of our committee, and the dean is hoping we'll have our work done by midsummer, again, early fall. So look for results there. We'll be presenting results soon too. We've been working hard at training our leadership and our faculty and our students in unconscious bias education, so that we can all have a better understanding of the way that biases impact our daily lives and our daily decisions. And you'll be seeing some numbers about that coming out soon, but we've had a small group, an enlarging group, a growing group of dedicated faculty teaching in that program, and they've now reached hundreds of people. So we'll be presenting more information about that. And so how's that?
That's good. Dr. Parker, Dean of Students, anything to add?
Well, Nancy already mentioned graduation, which is pretty much the entire focus of student affairs right now. So we've got the MD program, of course, but we have graduations for the other programs within the School of Medicine. So epidemiology, genetic counseling, physical therapy, DMRT, G-pills, pathology assistant. So we're going to be busy for a few days hopping around to all those. So I encourage any of you who are interested in those programs to attend those events. They're always lovely. From the standpoint of medical education, we're in the midst of a curriculum redesign. First one in 25 years for us, so this is kind of a big deal that's involving all of us in medical education. Large undertaking, so we've been recruiting lots of faculty to participate in that and getting lots of faculty and student input in that process to make sure everybody buys in and everybody has a say in what the new curriculum looks like, and that's set to roll out fall of 2020 with the class entering then. And I guess along those same lines from admissions, they have been out doing their usual recruiting stuff and promoting this new curriculum, which contains a lot of elements that students on the trail have been asking for a number of years, areas where we've sort of fallen behind the rest of the country. We are now positioning ourselves a little better, and actually Dr. Quezada said at a meeting a day or two ago that she anticipates an increase in applicants by maybe 1,000 based upon changing the curriculum.
I have one more thing to add. May I do that? Thanks, Dr. Perman. I realize that we are part of the school-wide initiative also in globalization education based on the students' white paper from last year, your fellows from last year who studied internationalization and globalization. And Donna's office and faculty from her area and faculty throughout the School of Medicine have been engaged in doing the so-called deep dive into the School of Medicine's participation in international work in research and education, and I know that other schools are engaged in that as well.
We're going to have a summit, a campus-wide summit, end of May.
Excellent.
Love to have the students that are interested there.
Wonderful. I mean, this is so exciting, and we are in the process now of pulling together our final report, which is due to Bonnie in Virginia on the 15th. I think ours might be in the 16th. We are looking forward to continuing with that process, as I know it then will take on a role at the campus level. But that's been a very exciting project to be involved with, and I know many of the people in the room may be involved with it as well.
Speaking of the President's Fellows, this year's group just reported out on a topic that I know is, again, top of mind. It's the subject of some of my angry behavior a year or so ago in the wake of the Parkland shooting. I asked the question, what should be the role of this institution with regard to gun violence? Not just mass shootings, but as I said the other day at the Student Symposium, since the group was called together, these are students from each one of the schools that create a white paper each year on what we should do better, put together with great assistance from Courtney Jones. Since we put that group together, there have been 168 homicides in Baltimore. So it's not just an issue of mass shootings, it's an issue of our own community. And they presented their report, and I suspect a year from now we'll be able to make comments about what we followed up on from their recommendations. So thank you for pointing that out. I was going to pick on you, Vice President Murray. What's new with the stuff I don't understand, IT?
So probably the most newsworthy IT item this week is that, and you may have heard about this, we're deploying WebEx throughout the entire university community. WebEx is a video conferencing tool, collaboration and communication tool. It'll be available to employees and students, not only on your desktop, but on computers remotely, in classrooms and conference rooms. So look forward to an email soon about getting your own personal WebEx account. So I wanted to announce that.
So use me as an example. How would I use WebEx?
So with WebEx at your desktop, Dr. Perman, you could actually...
This ought to be good.
Yeah, you could actually send an email with a link in it to anybody you want to have a meeting with. And when they click on that link, they'll be able to see you, video, as well as audio. Or you could just have it audio if you wanted it that way. But you could bring in individuals on campus or off campus to easily establish a meeting right from your desktop. And that could happen for any individual on campus.
So I could stop seeing people and just...
You could. The second thing is I want to thank everybody for taking the cybersecurity training. Roger Ward sent out an email regarding a link to 3 different modules for improving our education about cybersecurity awareness, and that's really important. So thank you for taking it. If you haven't, the deadline for doing so is May 3rd. So thanks again.
Maybe as a last topic before I see if there are any questions that have been stimulated. You want to say something?
I was just going to give an example. We were kind of the
Oh,
guinea
fine.
pig with the WebEx. A week ago, you know, every year we hold auditions for student speaker for commencement. And we had about 5 people who self-nominated, one of whom is being hospitalized. I believe actually this week she was going to undergo a bone marrow transplant, and she really wanted to audition. And she's in another unnamed hospital in town. And we were able to accommodate her from her hospital room to be able to audition, and I think that was very special.
Good, wonderful. I was going to see if Dawn and any of our other colleagues here who take such good care of our physical plan. You want to add anything about what's going on with regard to properties that people might be interested in? I caught you at the wrong time, Dawn.
No,
I'm
I'm
sorry.
just thinking about, there is a project that is coming up that is not our project, but is being run by BGE. And it's gonna have implications for the campus for probably over a year. They're gonna take sections of different roads and do the, is it the water? Natural gas lines. And so they have been meeting with our teams, with the hospital teams, with people from VA to be thoughtful about how this project is rolled out. And you can have confidence, and our team has been on them to provide advanced schedules. We have looked at potential pitfalls along the way and asked them how they're going to address that. So we're holding their feet to the fire to make sure that it disrupts our campus activity as little as possible.
But there will be disruption.
We will get that information to you. There's a host of streets. They're going to start on the south end of campus and then go to the north end of campus. But we will be communicating that information to you in advance. Additionally, you may or may not be aware that we purchased the property on the corner of Green and Saratoga. It looks like a matchstick piece of building over there. It used to say junkyard on the side of it. It is part of some of the work that we're doing as we try to see what we can do to help revitalize our community. Can you think of anything else, Stu or Terry, by way of property?
That block that Dawn is talking about, it's when we get that building down and finish a couple of other acquisitions, we'll have a piece of property that maybe someday in the future needs to be developed for the university. But in the meantime, we're thinking about athletic fields that could be for our family here, but also the neighborhood.
We also are going to be closing shortly, if we haven't already, on the Ronald McDonald House. And we're in the process of, we had some initial thoughts, but we've also been approached about possibly doing a land swap with the Hope Lodge. So we're having those conversations.
Want to make sure everybody knows that the Archdiocese is in the final stages of acquiring a property that you're probably familiar with if you are up and down Martin Luther King. It's the field between essentially Lexington and Saratoga. There are houses circling it. It's been open for about 20 years. It was originally intended by the city to put a school there. That never happened. And the Archdiocese has raised the funds and worked with the city to build a Catholic school on the west side of Martin Luther King Drive, principally to serve the West Baltimore community. It will be open to our employees, our students, if they have children that they wish to attend that school, probably about 500 or 600 students. I think it's good for the neighborhood. I think it's good for the campus. I think that there are things that we can offer to the children in that school, as we do with other schools, and things that they can offer us, all to be determined. But that will be, I think, a further enhancement to the greater environment here. Okay. Yes, Courtney.
Hello, everyone. I'm Courtney Jones-Carney from Campus Life Services. And so this is more of an announcement than anything else. I wanted to share that about a year ago, Ebony Nicholson and I authored a proposal for a intercultural leadership certificate program through the graduate school. We submitted it to MHEC, and then later on in the summer, we received approval for that. And so this program will launch in this fall, 19. It is a very different program than folks probably would naturally think of for the graduate school. It is not at all focused on anything science related, but it is focused on inclusive leadership. And some of the programs, some of the courses are designed to help folks better understand how to communicate with across diverse groups of individuals. Also, there are 2 courses that are similar to like an American Studies program, so helping people to understand foundational experiences for various identities, and then a practical application course and an in-person institute, which will combine all of those sort of focuses that I talked about earlier. So this is a really great opportunity for folks to understand more about themselves, understand more about individuals who may be identities that are different from your own, and then take that a step further and figure out how you can apply that to your professional practice every single day, whether that's here, whether it's outside of this university, and just how you interact with folks in general. But this will be a great opportunity for folks to participate. The application is open until July 1st. Tuition remission is accepted for this program. And so I hope that folks will look into it. It's currently listed on the graduate school's website under the various programs that are offered there.
Courtney, is it a master's program or a certificate?
It's a
program?
certificate program.
It's a certificate program. Well, another enhancement. Thank you. Any other information sharing?
I just wanted to make everyone aware that our quantum financial project is moving right along.
I'll bet a lot of people don't know what that is.
How can you not know about quantum? We're in the
Especially if you don't
process.
want to.
We're in the process of replacing our enterprise-wide financial system. Everyone will be touched by this system in some way, shape, or form because we're having to change our chart of accounts. And it's a huge and massive project that over 40 of our employees have been working on for probably a year and a half at this point. And they have put in a great number of hours to work through it. And the end product will be something that will be light years ahead of what we currently have. You'll be able to sit at your desktop and drill down into information related to different purchase orders, et cetera. We are going to establish an analytics data warehouse, which in the beginning will have information from the financial system, and then we'll add quantum, and eventually we'll add student and HR, so that there'll be a rich one source place for going and having analytics developed and created to be able to answer and help us make better decisions. Scott, Peter, anything else you want to add?
Okay, one last call. All right, seeing no hands, thank you very much. Thanks for everything you do here.